We will start today from the next ayah where we left off, which is ayah number 33. Surah Al-Imran. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إن الله اصطفى آدم ونوحا وآل إبراهيم وآل عمران على العالمين ذرية بعضها من بعض والله سميع عليم. So the ayah roughly translated is that indeed Allah has chosen Adam and Nuh and the family of Ibrahim and the family of Imran over all creation. They are offsprings one of another, meaning they are related to one another. So this ayah is the beginning of the discussion, or you can even say the story, the saga of the people or the family of Imran. So there's actually two Imrans, historically speaking. There's Imran, who was the father of Musa and Harun, alayhi salatu wasalam, and then there's Imran, the father of Maryam, radiyallahu ta'ala anha. So it could be that both are referred to here, or it is specifically the father of Maryam, radiyallahu anha, which is probably more befitting because that's this pretty much of the subject that follows. So, Allahu Alam. Here we have a lot of things, of course, like everything in the Quran, the Kalam of Allah. There's so many things we can derive from it. But the first thing is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He chooses from amongst His creation. Right? He chooses from amongst His creation certain people, even we can say anything other than human beings as well. There are beings that Allah chooses for certain purposes, and this is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's wisdom, that He can create and He chooses also. يَخْلُقُ وَيَخْتَارُ. So Allah says He creates and He chooses. So the nature of the universe that we live in too, even at a very basic level, if you break everything down to atoms and cells and so forth and so on, there's a choice, if you will. There's a process here that happens where everything at some level is pretty much all the same. Is that right or wrong? At some level, everything pretty much so as organic materials pretty much has the same origin and structure. But at some point it diverges and it becomes something different. So what is that? Well, with people who would deny Allah, they'll say it's natural selection. What's the key word in that statement?
Natural?
No.
Selection.
Selection. We would just have to change one part of the sentence to understand this whole process. Instead of saying natural selection, we would say divine selection. And that's where you get istifa. You get my point? When Allah chooses, يَخْلُقُ وَيَخْتَارُ, He creates and He makes a choice. In other words, there's ikhtiyar. You know, the word in Urdu, ikhtiyar, is actually the root word in Arabic for yakhtar, the verbal form here. So ikhtiyar is a choice. Out of all of the possibilities, all right, I'm choosing that this will be what happens or how things will turn out. So again, take creation at its basic level, whether it's an atom or cells or anything like that, at any type of level that we're talking about, the very basic essence of all created things. They're all pretty much the same, and then all of a sudden what happens? There's differences. Right? From oneness to what? Multiplicity. That is in the essence of creation. Like other ayat of the Quran, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, many people use this to kind of like, I know Zakir Naik has used this as his proof for like the Big Bang theory in the Quran. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that everything was ratqan, that the heavens and the earth were all together. Ratqan literally means like uniformity or togetherness. Jama', literally everything is one. And then He split it apart. Now, you know, Big Bang theory and all that aside, but there is one basic message, that at some point all creation there is uniformity or togetherness. And then at another point there is differences. How does that happen? Well, you can either explain it one way, which is to remove God from the picture and say there's natural selection. We would say the key word in that statement again is what? Selection. The selection first, then replacing natural with divine. It's not natural selection, it's divine selection. That happens because there is, yes, there's a selection. Selection cannot come from, in other words, when you select something, what are you implying? There must be a being that has qudra, power, knowledge, the know-how, and knows what they want, irada, so forth and so on, to make a selection.
Authority.
You see what I'm saying? It's not logically even plausible to say there's a selection without that. Okay? So instead of saying that's it's the atheistic material way of looking thing, or materialistic way of looking things, that if we can't explain it, we'll just say natural or mother nature. Because we know at some point there's got to be some being, something there that made this happen. So instead of saying God, because we're allergic to that, we'll say it's natural selection, or we say mother nature has chosen. You see the key words, they still use chosen, selection. So they're still acknowledging that there's something there that chooses, something there that selects. What are we saying? Inna Allah astafa. Allah has selected and chosen. In this case, selected and chosen these prophets, which he names specifically, and families, meaning the families of these prophets, over all of creation. So it's not even just over other human beings. What is the statement here? Al alameen. Over all created beings, Allah selected divinely these particular people and these families, which is also, some ulama have said, an indication in this ayah that, when people say that mankind is ashraful makhluqat, as it said in Arabiya, the best of all creation, this is part of a proof of it. Why? What does Allah say here? Al alameen. Over all other created beings, Allah has divinely selected these humans. So one may say, well, these are very specific people, it's not everybody. You understand the argument? If someone were to retort, well, that's great, you're saying people in general, humans as a species, are superior. They have been divinely selected by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to have a rank, right? But in this ayah, he's not saying all people, is he? He's being very, all right, there's takhsis here, so there's a specification of whom? Adam, Nuh alayhi salam, the family of Ibrahim, the family of Imran. The answer would be, is every member of the descendants of Ibrahim, or is every person rather, who are descendants of Ibrahim alayhi salam, or descendants of Imran radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, are they all prophets? Were they all, even we can say, good people generally, right? Some of them, right, or maybe not the best of people, yet they're included in this, meaning they are the descendants of these people. So what would the answer be? That this is not just referring to prophets, this is referring to even these particular families and the people who were not prophets and the people who were not so forth and so on. So there's still an indication in this that in general, it is a general statement that humans are divinely chosen by Allah to have a rank that is superior over all other created beings. Al-Alameen, which includes the Malaika. So even outside of the material realm, in the spiritual realities, the Malaika too, all right, according to some ulama, and again, there's a difference of opinion, but most will use this ayah to prove that even over Malaika, there is a rank that human beings hold for many reasons. One of them too is that the Malaika don't have to choose between their natural impulses and obedience. You understand? Because they don't have them. They don't have that choice to make as human beings. On mukallaf, we are given a burden. Because the word in Urdu, mukallaf in Arabic means legally responsible. It's a very specific term, okay? But the word is related to, even in Urdu, taklif. What does taklif mean in Urdu? A burden, hardship, pain, anything that you put it's so the idea is there from this Arabic word that being morally responsible is a type of burden. It's painful to a certain degree because a person has to make a choice at some point in time. I can just follow my natural disposition to do something regardless of whether that's halal or haram or its implications or anything like that, or I can choose not to do it. And oftentimes, choosing not to do it will be somewhat painful. It's like telling your children to eat their vegetables or do their homework when they really don't want to, correct? So to do their homework or to eat things that are healthy for them, they often have to do it against their own desire, against what they want, and it doesn't feel good, right? It's taklif, in other words. It's not something that they're happy about, right? They don't smile while they're eating their vegetables or when they're doing their homework, right? You see what I'm saying? So that's the idea, that malaika, right, they don't have those impulses, they don't have to make that choice, okay? They just simply do whatever it is that they're supposed to do. They function how they're supposed to function, whereas human beings have been given this taklif, meaning we make choices, and oftentimes those choices have to go against the things that we want to do, the things that we feel comfortable with, and the things that make us happy. Right? And therein lies the keys of most of the problems that humanity faces, because they're very simple things. If you fly out of control and anger, it gets out of hand, what would be the bitter remedy for you? Well, it's very simple. You have a choice. Swallow your anger, in which the Prophet ﷺ said that there is no gulp, if you will, that is taken that Allah loves more than a person swallowing their anger. Instead, when the anger really has come up to the point that it's boiling, it's reaching that breaking point, and they really want to react, if they swallow, so to speak, that anger for the sake of Allah, nothing is more beloved to Allah. But is that easy? When you're angry, let's face it, there's nothing more satisfying than doing what? Letting that anger go, right? It's like that release that makes you say, okay, now I can go back to sleep or do whatever, or, you know. It is hard to do what? Swallow it. But it has to be, because there's only two results, and this is the thing that jaza'u sayyatu mithluha, as the Quran says, that the results or evil, its only recompense, its only jaza, is the evil like of it, which is an interesting statement, because even some scholars have said that some of the hudud, some of the penal laws of Islam, things that people often criticize Muslims for as being too harsh. Well, the reality is that they're supposed to be harsh. Why? They're called sayyah. When you do wrong, then the recompense for the wrong is, it has to be just as bad as the wrong that you did. It has to be as painful as the pain you caused to others. It's not supposed to be something that you look at and say, wonderful. Okay, the hudud, you understand it? It's not something that you should look at and say, oh, these are just great things. No, they are in and of themselves, if you will, lack of better words, cruel in that respect. Because the idea is the pain that you've given to others through your mistakes, that you have to feel that pain too. Okay? This is the recompense of it. So it's easier to feel the pain of what? Restraining yourself than to do whatever you want and have to feel the pain that you have inflicted on other people because you didn't control yourself. Which one is the better route? Right? Holding yourself back so you don't have to deal with the results either in this life or in the hereafter. Either one. The hudud are meant for this world, but Allah also has, if He so wills, in certain people, that there's something in the next world too waiting for them. It doesn't go by unanswered, unless, of course, what we all beg Allah for, ya'fu an kathir, unless Allah overlooks the wrong that we do, which is always the best out of all other options, which is why Allah tabarak wa ta'ala is al-afu, and is why Rasulullah told us that we should always ask, as in the hadith of Tirmidhi, always ask Allah for afiyah. Always. Because what is He trying to say? The best option, of course, is that Allah forgives and overlooks the wrong you do. Not that now every single thing that you have caused pain to somebody or something, or anything, not just people, but even animals, even insects. Right? There are hadith about ants and so forth and so on, right? Like things that we should not harm them or destroy their homes and so forth and so on. So it goes even to that level. It's better to have Allah's afu, meaning, again, pardoning us, not taking us to account, than to be taken into account at any level. Because then the pain that we cause others has to be felt ourselves. But that's the general rule. You get what I'm trying to say, right? I digressed, forgive me. But the idea is there, okay, that the pain has to be felt at some level. Either it's the pain of swallowing your anger, or it's the pain that you will feel after you've vented your anger out on some innocent soul, that now that has to come back to you somehow. It's got to return to you somehow. Okay? It's either one. The best route, what the Muslim should be aware of, is that the best route is to do what? Swallow your anger. And don't let it take control of you to the point that now you have to feel the effects of the wrong that you do. So we ask Allah for afiyah, of course. That's, of course, always our desire from Allah, that we do not held responsible for the majority of the mistakes that we make and the times that we slip and we're not able to withhold our anger and so many other problems that we can have. I'm just using anger because that's the most prevalent. Right? Most people, all right, get angry. There's very few people who are so weak in character, and I'm saying it because anger has a purpose too. Without any anger, you cannot feel indignant or stand up against evil and so forth and so on. There are very few individuals that they are so weak in character that they don't get angry at anything, right? And that's not a good quality either. There should be something that stirs you up, and something that gets you to the point, because that drives you to action, right? You can't do things for the sake of Allah without a little bit of what? That's why even Rasulullah was commanded, وَغْلُظْ عَلَيْهِمْ. And ghilza is literally enraged, to be enraged, right? Like to find that anger within you with certain people, that it should be directed towards them and their actions and the things that they do and say, right? If they're harming the community and other people, and if there are so many different ways in which that can be, understood. But the Prophet himself was commanded to do what? وَغْلُظْ عَلَيْهِمْ. Find it within yourself to muster up that anger, to take action when and where it's necessary. So no anger at all also is not. But anger unfettered, uncontrolled, and not within limits, that's what we're talking about. And because anger, again, like I said, most people possess that quality. There's very few people who don't have any anger at all. And if they do, as I mentioned, that is not a good thing either. To be totally bereft of anger and never get upset at anything, that's not a good thing. This is what we would call cowardice, basically. Understand? This is just nothing bothers you. Anyhow, back to this. After Allah said this, there is this divine selection, okay? Certain people whom Allah picks because of what? Well, two things. Sami'un, alimun. So now, sama', the fact that Allah has this quality that is called sama'. What is sama'? To be able to hear, right? Okay. To have the faculty of hearing. It is a type of idrak, meaning perception in general. You perceive things based on certain qualities that we have. For instance, as a human being, we hear things too. So if we can't see it, we can, right? So Allah's hearing, how is that understood? Because we have the quality of hearing. Allah has this quality as well. Is it the same? No, not at all. So what does Allah hearing pertain to? That He is able to, right? He is able to hear. In other words, He has perception of anything that can be heard. Now, what's anything that can be heard?
Maybe falling from a tree.
Even more so, let's put it this way: bats, they can't see. So how do they perceive things? Through radar, right?
Echo.
Right. This is how the modern radar is based off of. Now, sonar. Sonar. So they hear, right, through the again, like it's an echo. It bounces off and it comes back, and the sound waves and so forth. But can they hear things that are not normally perceivable to our ears? Right? You understand? Objects that normally we wouldn't be able to hear anything, they can, if you will, hear it, correct? So take that and think further and think about Allah's quality. So what does it mean to be able to hear everything that can be heard? In other words, a perception that is called hearing that perceives anything that exists, period. Okay? Whether we can hear it or not. So even the inward thoughts, as you said, وَنَعْلَمُ مَا يُوَسْوِسُ بِهِ نَفْسُهُ, like Allah says, we know what every human soul whispers to themselves, meaning the inner thoughts that you have, even some things that you're not conscious of, as they say, subconscious, and even further. All right, He knows what's akhfa, another ayah. Like We know what's sir, and we know those hidden thoughts. We know what's akhfa, what's even more hidden. What could be more hidden what's something that's already hidden? Sir is literally hidden. Akhfa is even more subtle and more hidden than that. So what does that all mean? Something that you're not aware of, and even something that's even further, like even more and a more extreme degree that you're completely unaware of, we know of that too. Trying to tell us again, like what? There's things within you don't even know about yourself that I know. Okay? That I'm aware of. You don't have to express it. You don't have to say it. Those inner thoughts, and put it to you this way. Allah's knowledge, again, is not limited to the things we're limited to. Right? Not even limited to the things that are just like a bat, another creation whose perception of hearing is far beyond ours. Allah cannot be limited to that either. So the point I'm making is this: if you can hear your own thoughts, Allah can't. Would that make any sense?
It's intention.
Intention is part of it too. But even just that much, like we all go through a process of thinking, which you can say you can hear your thoughts, right? When you're thinking, you can literally hear them, those sentences and words and whatever it may be. If you can do that, Allah can't. What's the answer? No, of course not. Allah definitely is aware of it. So that means even those deep, dark thoughts that we have all the time, good or bad, Allah is aware of all of that. So what is He trying to say? If this sama and an ilm, His knowledge, it encompasses. Now the knowledge, again, we have to go back to what that it means. Allah's knowledge is not relegated to time, space, and place. Which also indicates what? That when Allah ahata bi kulli shay'in ilma, that again, this whole thing, you look at creation, it's a very basic structure, and then you have all of these things that occur from that basic structure in different ways, different types of proportions, so forth and so on, right? Now Allah is not only aware of that, He's also aware if there was another possibility amongst the infinite types of possibilities that are there. He's also aware of that as well. So what would that indicate to you? Just asking as a question, what would that indicate to you? When Allah makes a choice, He makes it based on what? Knowledge. And what would that indicate? That when He chooses a person like Adam alayhi salam, or Nuh alayhi salam, or a particular family like the family of Ibrahim, or the family of Imran, if it's based on knowledge, then obviously that means that this was the what? The best alternative. That is divine selection. That out of all of creation, these were the people who were best suited. Not even because of them, because Allah created them and made them that way. That they were the best suited to be what? In this case, recipients of prophethood.
No, it's not mentioned in prophethood.
No, it's not. But it's coming. Because here, the important thing to remember is it's not just the person. The whole family is mentioned. Because the whole family is part of the ingredients that make the person. Do you understand? It is the tarbiyah. That's why the word is used, tarbiyah, also coming up. It is the upbringing of that person, which in actuality makes the person. So just like when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this is why even when we go further, when He describes the upbringing of Maryam, even before Isa alayhi salam, radiallahu anha, He uses it for ambataha, which is literally used for making something grow. In other words, in that, like plants and gardens and fruits and vegetables, you do what? You cultivate them, all right? So why is that verb used for a human being? Because human beings, in the way that they're raised, it is very similar to the way you would do what? Cultivate plants and vegetables and so forth and so on. It takes the same amount of care, and it takes the same amount of attention, like the right place to plant it, the right time, the right amount of sunlight, the right amount of air, the right amount of this, that, and the other thing. All of that has to go into consideration to make what? To make the person what they are. So what do you think the message is? The person is not just comes out of nowhere. The person needs tarbiyah. And tarbiyah, it takes a whole, right, family, if you will. And, you know, unfortunately, if the family is not there, then you have to have, right, some other alternative, society, whatever it may be. but they have to have the proper nurturing in order to be the individual that they are. And this is actually related. It's funny that what I've been mentioning recently in khutbah and our last time, like about being unknown and being, idfin wujudaka fi ardil khulmud, this statement of Ibn Ta'ala, bury your existence in the earth of obscurity. Part of what some people say this means also, there's a lot of things that this indicates, but one of it is that, if a person has any achievements, they should realize those achievements are not their own. The reality is your achievements are the result of other people and other circumstances, not your own. So a person should never look at themselves, as we said before, what are the aspects of following the Prophet? Dhillatun nafs, which to lower yourself, to lower your ego, to acknowledge the fact, opposite of the idea of the self-made man, right, where everyone brags about their own accomplishments. That I did this, I did that, I did this. Halanke, you got $1 million loan from your father. That's far from being a self-made man. Do you understand? Even if you went to an Ivy League college, did you pay for it? Who is, when you were a child, behind you, pushing you to do your homework, to do your work, and to pay for the clothes that you needed to go to school and the breakfast? And who is the one? Was it you? So is there any such thing as a self-made person anyhow, in reality? Is there? No. A humble person will realize that whatever they have because of others. Whatever circumstances they have, they're not the ones that they created. They're the ones that something else and somebody else has given to them in life. So the humble person doesn't acknowledge himself. What do they say? A humble person, no matter how accomplished they serve, would say, I would like to thank my teachers. I would like to thank my parents. I would like to thank even my spouse for supporting me. I would like to, you see, the first thing they do is what? The acknowledgement that I am not a self-made person. I am not what I am without all of these people. If these people were not there in my life, I would not ever be anything ever, and I would accomplish nothing. Hence, that's why the Prophet said to us what? Man lam yashkur nas lam yashkurillah. Whoever does not thank people has not in reality thanked Allah. If you cannot acknowledge that you are not an individual that came out of nowhere, if you cannot acknowledge, at least at a basic level, that it was all of these people combined that made me who I am, you will never be able to acknowledge that it is Allah who gifted everyone and everything with what they have. You understand the connection? You have to be humble enough to realize that you are not self-made. You are a result of tarbiyah. Okay? And whom Allah chooses, He gives them the best of tarbiyah. That's the whole point. فَتَقَبَّلَ. You see what I mean? Allah gives that person the best of tarbiyah, whomever Allah chooses. If there's divine selection, just like even in a Darwinist's mind, right, if they're following that theory or that ideology, what would they say? It's natural selection. So certain species advance others because of certain circumstances. Even there, they're acknowledging that they are not what? Self-made. They are a victim of circumstance. We're saying replace that with natural, put divine. What do we say? This is divine selection. When Allah wants good for certain people or certain families or certain individuals even, then He creates all the circumstances around them to make them what they are. You see what I'm saying? And that's the message of these few ayat, and that's why there's in certain indications here, if people always think about these things, and talk about these things. How do we raise our kids? Or hey, what is the solution to these problems? And there's indications here of the tarbiyah that is necessary when you want an individual to accomplish certain things. Here, accomplishments, of course, of a very spiritual nature. Because let's face it, the family of Imran, even according to Christian tradition, had no material accomplishments that we can speak of. Isa alayhi salam himself is called Al-Masih because he was what? According to Christian tradition, he had no home, he had no property, right? He had literally no connection with the dunya whatsoever. The same with Maryam radiallahu anha. She never got married. Why? There's also the thing that was her mother, Hannah. You know Hannah? It's funny how they take the names of these great people and then become something else, mashallah. But Hannah, literally, Hannah, it was the name of the mother of Maryam radiallahu anha, when she told Allah that nadartu, that I'm making this oath, if you give me a child, because she was already at the age now that she had menopause, basically, according to the descriptions that are given of her circumstance. But she still wanted a child. And so she said, if you give me a child, meaning even in this circumstance, if you give me a child, then my promise to you, that's what nadar is. When you do that, you say, Ya Allah, if you give me such and such a thing, then my promise is I will do this. Whatever it may be. I'll fast on Mondays and Thursdays and so forth and so on, right? What was her nadar? Whatever child you give me, I will make them muharraran. Muharraran comes from tahrir. Tahrir in Arabic actually, and Urdu it means to, and tahrir in Arabic actually means to free. To free somebody. Tahriru raqaba in the Quran, meaning to free a neck. What does that mean? To free a slave. So tahrir in Arabic literally means to free something or someone. Muharrar is the one who has been freed. What does that mean? Someone who, in the time of Bani Israel, is allowed to devote all of their time and energy to the ibadah of Allah, and they have no obligations to anyone else. You understand? They're not obliged to work. They're not obliged to get married. That's why one of the implications of this is that the person who is chosen to do that does not get married. Because once you get married, then you have obligations to your family. Okay? So that's also why Maryam radiallahu anha, wallahu alam, was never what?
Although I assume at the time that was mainly from that, right?
Yes.
And that's why she was a little
That's what the
surprised.
surprise was, of course, because that's part of it. They were also only men, because the rulings of the synagogue, or if you will, a temple, were pretty much the same as a masjid, meaning what would happen if you're a woman, you're going to go through what? Okay, big boys' words, you understand, right? There's issues of tahara there. So she would have to leave, okay, that area. She couldn't stay, so she couldn't devote all of her time. There's going to be at least a week, if not more, where she can't be there. So this was the idea. That's why they chose only men, for that reason, because they wouldn't have that issue, so they could literally stay in that area all the time and not go anywhere and have any obligations. Okay, so she was thinking, well, how is this going to happen if I gave birth to a female? And what was Allah's response? Wallahu a'lamu. Allah knows better than her what she gave birth to. In other words, that you, in your mind, you're assuming that a male child would be better, but I know that the female child I gave you, Maryam radiallahu anha, will be better than any man I could give you. Understand? That she will be able to fulfill this oath in a way that no man would be able to, which is also an indication of another lesson, which is what? When you want to do something, if Allah chooses something that you're not expecting to fulfill that goal that you have, just submit. You never know. She's assuming that a male child would be better fitted for the job. And in Allah's knowledge, Maryam radiallahu anha was better and more fitted for that job than any male child He could have given her. So Allah knows, you don't, right? And obviously that is the case, because Maryam radiallahu anha became the mother of Isa alayhi salam. And it's hard pressed to find any human figure in human history that is more popular than who? Right? Hard pressed, right? So the mother of that individual was, of course, obviously we would never go to that extent because that is an enormity to say such, but she became also so revered in the eyes of Christians that they literally called her, because the statement is very bad, the mother of God. Right? Now obviously that's absurd, but the point I'm saying is that such an individual, that people would go to that extent. Okay, you understand? Would be so reverent of that individual that they would go to that extent to call them that. That no human being could possibly plan out, could they? Right? So I'm just seeing a little girl, but what is Allah saying? Hey, that's what you see, but I know something you don't. And this woman will do something that will not be done by anyone before or after her. Okay? Giving birth, and namely to what? Masih ibn Maryam alayhi salatu wasalam. So obviously there's a lot of things implied here. So that's part of another implication here too, is the idea that there's a lot of Muslims don't unfortunately comprehend this, is that it is okay, and even in certain cases, it is necessary to be able to support people who don't have obligations other than what? Than studying and deen and so forth and teaching. Okay, it is not, so we sometimes get this false idea that that's not part of what a Muslim society should do. Okay, but that's the reality. Just like Bani Israel had the same concept. Certain people should be given, all right, the freedom, literally tahrir, to do what? No obligations to anything else but the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Which means, what's the implication of that? It's the real world. Things don't stop. It means somebody, in this case Zakaria alayhi salam, was taking care of her, فَكَفَّلَهَا, all right? But somebody has to take the responsibility of that person. You understand what I'm saying? How many times have you heard this in the community or in the khutbah? Usually we assume the opposite, that we shouldn't do that.
It's not against Rabbaniyat.
Right. And not even that. I'm not even talking about, I'm talking about the idea that in society there has to be certain people. In our case, yes, Rabbaniyya is definitely not there, so we can't do it to that extent to where we're not going to get married, we're not going to have any obligations. But there should be people whom don't go out and work 9 to 5, so to speak. Their job is to sit with the books and research and give fatwa, in other words, and talk about, just like think tanks, and even the society understand, a think tank, what is their job? We will find some type of funding for you from wherever, give you the money so you don't have any other obligations, and then your job is to literally sit in a conference room and just talk and then write a research paper after that will, about this subject or that. And even non-Muslims understand that has to be done. There has to be people that are not obliged to do other things that can do this. Why? Because that's the problem with the modern Muslim too, is we think that deen, like for dunya, everything is complicated, right? For deen, it should be so simple that anyone and anybody can just speak about it and talk about it. Even you don't even know what a fi'al and a fa'il is. You don't want to know what a verb and the subject is in Arabic, something as simple as that, but yet you can say whatever you want. You understand what I'm saying? Like if you were to even just read the Quran, you wouldn't even know something as simple as that, which is the verb, which is the subject. You don't even know that much, but yet you're an expert. That's the disease part, right? The deen is not always that simple. There are plenty of things that Rasulullah didn't explain to us explicitly, yet are we left alone just to do أَيَحْسِبُ الْإِنسَانُ أَنْ يُتْرَكُ سُدًى? This is what Imam Shafi rahimahullah was asked this question: why do you fuqaha spend so much time talking about issues that were not spoken about in the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam? What did he say? He answered with this ayah: أَيَحْسِبُ الْإِنسَانُ أَنْ يُتْرَكَ سُدًى? Do human beings assume that they will be just left alone without purpose? What is he trying to infer? That in life, especially as we know, we have changed greatly from the time of the Prophet ﷺ in terms of society, everything, technology, right? Do you assume there's no answer to the things that you face every day? Do you assume, in Allah's knowledge, there definitely is. Whether I know it or not, even this little line in the wall somewhere has a purpose. Even if I do, that's what sudah means, no purpose. Everything in the universe, everything Allah created has a purpose, whether I understand it or not. So you as human beings who have been given intellect and given a choice, I can do this, do you assume that you will also be left without purpose? What's the indication? There are things that we know, as we complain about today, that we come across that are not there in the time of the Prophet ﷺ. Either we're going to say there's no answer for this and we don't need to worry about it, or we're going to say what? There is an answer. There is something that we need to know about this situation that we're in, or about these ideas that we're presented with, or about these situations that we are presently involved in, certain types of monetary, whatever, dealings, and the banks and riba and all these questions, or even at other levels. It's just all over the place we have questions, correct? Are there answers? Now either you're going to say you can give an answer just without any background whatsoever, basically on a whim. That's what it's called. Okay, following your hawa. Like, well, I think this sounds good. And then what is the issue with that?
Might be no.
Right, you don't know whether it is or not. You have no knowledge. Plus also, what is the characteristics of people's hawa? Are they all the same or are they different? Right. So then you're going to get in one room completely different answers about one subject. Well, I think this, I think that, and it's not even think. Think actually, even there's laws of thinking. It's called logic and rationale, right? And most people don't even do that much. They're not even using a process of thinking even when it comes to answering your question. It's just like, wow, when they say I think, what they really mean is I feel. Right? Usually when they say I think, is well, I just feel, it just seems right to me that that's the answer. And again, there's no thought process really. Because even that, what's the whole word here? In the Quran, the words are used tafakkur, tadabbur. Even I just said it here, key word, thought process. What's called another in Arabic. Right, it's not intuitive. If it's not a process, it's called intuitive, meaning you don't have to think about it, right? I just got the answer, just intuitively. That's what it means in English, what they call in Arabic al-ilm al-dururi. Now these things that we're talking about, questions that you have, a question, does it require intuitive answers or what does it require? Thought process, there has to be. Now, most people who are engaged in working and doing everything else, do they even have the time to do tafakkur and tadabbur? The time that is necessary. Either you're going to say, that's what I'm trying to say, most of us will think, why even bother with all that? I'm just going to read for myself and make my own conclusion. Based on what? But if you're serious about the issue, what would you say is required? Time and thought. Tadabbur and tafakkur, and there has to be a process. There has to be another. So you need a group of people, not everybody, but there has to be a group of people who are not occupied with other things, who can sit and think about the issue. So in the time of the fuqaha, like Imam Abu Hanifa and others, rahimahullah, he had his own majlis, meaning he had scholars around him, more than 20, each in a different field, who would discuss issues. Sometimes they said for months. How long? For months, not a couple days or a week. Just sometimes the issue would be discussed for a month before they could make a conclusion. You need that kind of thing in society. We don't have rahbaniyya, la surata fil Islam, as the Prophet says, which basically means we should get married and have children. And there's a reason for that too, because marriage and children is another part of da'wah. It strengthens your society, and it's also a good tarbiyah for both men and women. The best tarbiyah you can have is in the relationship with a spouse, okay? It is a very spiritual thing in that regard too. So this is a deen where surura, this rahbaniyah, has been forbidden, okay? That's why we wouldn't tell people like that you don't need to get married. We would actually say, no, you do need to get married, okay? However, there still needs to be, as the Quran itself says, ta'ifa, there has to be a group who take time out liyatafaqahu fi ad-din, to specifically think about, talk about, and do research in regards to, and here again, not just any type of knowledge or any subject. What is the word? Fi ad-din. In the deen itself, there must be a group of people who that's what they do. Muharraran, meaning they don't have other obligations. This is what they're supposed to do because they're there to give the answers that the ummah needs. You understand my point? But they can't do that if they're worried about paying the next bill. So someone has to take responsibility at some level to say, okay, no, we will free them of those worries. We will free them of those obligations so that they can concentrate on the obligation they have to us of learning and teaching. You see what I'm saying? لِيَتَّفَقَّهُ فِي الدِّينِ, to learn, to teach. That is the whole point. So this happened in every ummah. And in the ummah that came before it, it wasn't just learning and teaching, it's even just for ibadah. Meaning, in other words, the muharrar here was not just a teacher, but specifically, okay, kafaraha Zakaria alayhi salam took the responsibility. I will take care of her. Her only job is to do what? Worship Allah. That's it. And the Christians carried the same tradition in monasteries. Basically, who pays for all of that? How does a church get that money? You think it just comes from the thin air? Christians on their own will, even today, donated to the church so that these people could spend their whole time doing what? Worship. You see what I'm saying? Now, we don't do that, but we still have the obligation to produce scholars. Okay, that's an obligation. Imam Bukhari himself, how was he able to travel and learn? It was actually his eldest brother who took the responsibility of his finances and education, who gave him the ability to travel and to learn. And to end on that note, even Rasulullah in his time, there is a hadith where a man came and complained to the Prophet ﷺ because basically He was muhtarif, which means, hirfa in Arabic means an occupation. Meaning he was occupied, he was working. His brother would spend most of his time with the Prophet ﷺ learning, meaning Ashabu Sufa, you understand? He complained that because my brother's not working with me, I have to spend for him. Surprisingly enough, in this case, the Prophet ﷺ said what? لَعَلَّكَ تُرْزَقُ بِهِ. Perhaps Allah is providing you because of him. See, we can't confuse hadith out of their context. Other people that the Prophet ﷺ, someone came and asked for money and he gave him an axe, right? And told him, go to the woods, cut some wood and sell it in the market. Don't loaf off of other people and ask for handouts. Why? Because this person's not occupied in anything. You understand? They just want to come to the masjid and ask because they know the Prophet ﷺ will give and say, hey, if I do this enough, I don't have to do anything. That's why there are books written in the past about earning, kitabul kasb, like fuqaha would write books about the obligation in Sharia to earn a livelihood. Why would they even have to say that? Because, in our context, you don't really have to say that to people living in the United States of America, because if you're not working, what's going to happen? You're going to be on the street eventually at some point in time, so you've got to do something. But why would they have to tell people that in that time? Because look, if you look at the context, first of all, since the time of Umar, there was waqf. And you could literally just be born in a Muslim society and you would get free land and a free home. Do you understand? Without doing anything. Free land, free home. With no taxes, by the way. Okay? And you don't have to pay zakah unless you're what? Unless you're earning the money to pay. So you don't have to pay zakah. You don't have to pay for rent, mortgage, anything. You got a house. You have land. And all you would have to do back in those days is go to the masjid and look like Allah, like Sufi Wala, like in the corner somewhere, and people will do what? They'll feed you. You understand? They'll say, MashaAllah, this guy's so pious, come to my house, or I'll come and bring food. And the person will just do this, and eventually the ulama would have to say, what? Look, hold on. You have to work, you have to earn, you have obligations. You can't just loaf around because you can get away with it. You get what I'm trying to say? You had a place to stay, you had land, you didn't have taxes to pay, you don't have mortgage to pay, people will feed you, they're not going to let you starve, and all you have to do is go to the masjid and do what? Allah, Allah, Allah. And they're going to say, MashaAllah, what a pious person, and they'll provide, you'll be okay. So the ulama had to tell them, but what's the difference? Why would the Prophet say in this case that you are provided because you provide? Because he wasn't doing nothing, he was learning, in other words, with whom? The Prophet. So just like you would send your child to college and tell them not to work, because why? Right, you're studying, you're not loafing around, you're doing something. And if you work, that will detract from your studies. So what the Prophet is saying is what? He's not doing nothing. He is occupied in a different way, albeit he's studying and learning from me so that he can teach in the future. So this is not a loss of wealth or effort. In fact, Allah is providing you to provide for him so that he can do this and he can educate himself and educate other people. But if it's someone who's not doing any of that, and this is the difference. In our ummah, you can't just do ibadah and lofa for other people. This is surura and rahban. You can't do that. In other words, you can't just do it like these other people. You can't just stay in the masjid all day long and expect other people to provide for you. Okay? You see what I'm saying? But if you're studying with the purpose of educating and helping the ummah, this in itself is a type of occupation, not a dunyawiyya occupation, but it's necessary. And that's where we would have to set up some type of provision, like it was done for Maryam anha, in a different way for ibadah, but there has to be some type of support. Minus that support, you basically will be bereft. And then people complain about the quality of ulama and the kind of, well, whose fault is that? You're the ones who produce them. They don't come from Mars somewhere, from another creation. They come from you. So if there is a lack of quality there, it's because there's a lack of support. Even Imam Abu Hanifa, because he was one of the few who did have his own wealth. He had a business which he was very lucrative. Actually, Imam Abu Hanifa was very wealthy. It is said about him that when he would go to the masjid to pray, his topi, because at that time it was like the people in the courts where it was very expensive and very nice, so people would literally turn their heads because he was very well dressed, because he had a lot of money. He's very wealthy. But what people don't know about him too is that Imam Abu Yusuf was one of his star students. And he later on became the first person with the title Qadi Quda. the grand judge, if you will, of the whole Muslim at that time, from Spain basically to China. He was the chief justice, if you wouldn't put it that way, and he was the first one to achieve that. The story of his education goes as such. He was attending the study circles, the halaqat of Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah ta'ala. And Imam Abu Hanifa, like a good teacher should, was able to recognize how intelligent this young person was. He saw the potential. But one day, Abu Yusuf, his father came, and because they were a poor family, they didn't have much money and they were laborers, he said that, look, Imam Abu Hanifa can afford to sit around all day and talk about these things. He's got the money for it. You and your family, we don't have it. You have to work. So you're going to stop going to these study circles and you're going to go with me and you're going to earn some money. So Imam Abu Hanifa noticed that he was absent. Again, as a good teacher would. If you have a star student who has a lot of potential and they're not there, what would you do? He's like, where is he? And he asked about him and the people told him, this is the situation. His family doesn't have much. His father forced him to leave because he said he has to now help and earn. So he approached Imam Abu Yusuf by himself. And he said, he just said this simply, if this is the issue, what's keeping you from coming to class, take this. And he gave him a bag full of 1,000 dirhams and said, take this, right? Spend it on your needs. And if you need more, when you need more, meaning when this is gone, come back and I'll give you another one. And the ajib thing is Abu Yusuf said, every time I was never able to ask because as if he already knew and he would give me another, and he sponsored his own student education out of his own pocket. And that's how he became, again, what he was later on, Imam Abu Yusuf, Qadi Qudha, right? I mean, great figure in the history of Islam, but his own teacher did what? He said, don't let this become I myself will pay out of my pocket. And the beautiful thing about that too is it's not a loan. You don't have to pay this back later on when you're struggling. Fi sabilillah, I will pay for it. You do what you have to do. Be free to be able to study and teach and not have to worry about, again, like a loan later on as you go throughout life. Alhamdulillah, the beauty of that, mashallah, but this is what we should know these things so that the Muslim community understands really how we should function. Okay? I mean, you have to have that. There has to be some support for a group of people who this is their job. This is what you should be doing, and this is what we need. But if that's the key word there too, if you don't feel the need for it, that we don't need people with that type of expertise. We don't need people who can help the community that way, then obviously what? We're not going to give any support. We're just going to say, whatever, who cares? And there's a danger in that too, because as the Prophet said in the last day, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, what will happen? People will take juhala, ignorant people, as their leaders. In other words, they won't feel the need for these things. They won't care about producing scholars of that caliber. And in the end of the day, when the time comes and those questions will pop up, what will they do? They will ask ignorant people. What do we do? Ask Fulan. Does Fulan have the credentials? No. But who cares? We need an answer. So Fulan will provide it for you. But unfortunately, it won't be ilm. It'll be jahala. May Allah protect us from that state and that stage and having that kind of attitude. So even here, as I said, even for ibadah, the people would have a system. Zakaria was that in this case, the takfil or kafala, meaning he took responsibility of that person's livelihood, that person's food, so forth, and he had that responsibility. And again, that should be done too. It's another thing to understand that even in cases like that, individuals who want to dedicate themselves to the studying and learning of deen, usually it should be the responsibility of few people, not the whole community, because then, as in this case, if few people are not there that can do it, ideally relatives, then there should be, mashallah, somebody like some system like a waqf or something like that that can do it. Does it make sense? You understand what I'm saying? So anyhow, as we go on here, we see that after he mentions dhurriyatan ba'duha min ba'd, that they were basically, in other words, they were progeny of each other, some from amongst others, meaning at some point they were all related. Now there's an indication in this, and Ibn Arabi rahimahullah ta'ala mentioned this about this ayah, that there is a connection that you have with others that is either, it is what you call from the surah or ma'nawiyah. Surah, what does surah mean in even Urdu surat? Literally a picture. Right? So what it's meant here in Arabic, like huwa al-khaliq al-bari'un al-musawwir. Musawwir is the last stage of creation. Even in the physical world, like you said, you have things that you can barely, scarcely see, like atoms and cells. And those atoms and cells compound themselves and become what? Physical bodies, which can be seen very clearly, right? You understand my point? So even in this ayah, Imam Ghazali has mentioned Khaliq, Bari, Musawwir. There's a process of creation from the, basically, like, you know, what we can say, the metaphysical, from the concept to what? To the taswir, to the physical entity and reality that thing becomes. So there's two connections you can have with people. One is surah, which is the physical. That would be your literal physical relations, right? Through blood, as they say, blood relations. And the other is ma'nawiyah. Ma'nawiyah would be what? Metaphysical, the opposite of physical. All right? So you can have a connection. There's a hadith that mentions this. The word is used al, right? The family. So there's a hadith that is weak in its sanad, but its meaning, most ulama have said, is sound. That the Prophet ﷺ said that Ali kulu taqiyan, that my family is every person of taqwa. Meaning, who's related to me? Any person who has taqwa. Related how? Surah or ma'nawiyah? Ma'nawiyah. Meaning in their deen and in spirit, they are connected to me, if not by blood. So you can be connected from both ways, which is what? Right? Blood and spirit, or only in one way. In spirit, but not in physical, in like a physical blood relation. But oftentimes, he said the indication here is most of the time, not all the time, but many times, the connection of the spirit and deen, in this case, he's mentioning certain prophets, Adam, Nuh, Hadith, and the family of Ibrahim, the family of Imran. They had one and the same deen, but they were also one and the same what? Family. They were also related, which is another indication of all this tarbiyah. It can be that it's spiritual and not through blood, but most of the time it'll also be through blood. That in this family, right, there's a tarbiyah going on. That most of the time from this family, what will you find? Right. You see what I'm saying? And that's a connection to even a physical, even if you look at just from a physical, like all these things, environment and, you know, what do you call it? Natural selection and all that. Certain environments are more likely to produce what? Certain results, even from the physical point of view. And that's also the indication here, that it sometimes does matter the background of a person, not all the time.
Yeah, general rule.
General rule. Because you can also have people from the same background who become the most pakka kafir ever, right?
Yeah.
Right? So it's a general rule. But that's also an indication as a lesson for us that if tarbiyah, what's important in tarbiyah? The family itself, who you're marrying into, who you're choosing as the people that are going to be the ones who do the tarbiyah of, right, your generation. It's also important to consider, because it has, in general, an effect. Now, it can be exceptions, but in general, there's an effect. So all of that is taken into consideration. You see how the Quran works? That's tadabbur and that's tafakkur. It is to look at it and think about, okay, what is all of this trying to tell us? What is the conclusions we're supposed to make out of this? So then she said, of course, that whatever is in my stomach, if you give me a child, inni nadhartu, that if you give me a child, then I will indeed give you this child exclusively, muharran, meaning khalisan, exclusively for your ibadah. Okay? So Allah accepted it from her. Sami'un alim, meaning knowing that she was sincere in her request, Allah accepted it. But again, when Allah accepts from you your intention, then allow Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to do it in the way that He knows best. And this is the whole point of her saying what? فَلَمَّا وَضَعَتْهَا, when she gave birth to this child and found out that it was a female, what did she say? رَبِّ إِنِّي وَضَعْتُهَا أُنْثَى, I gave birth to a girl. So now what do? It's not in our tradition, it's not going to happen. My oath is done, right? So what does Allah say? Wallahu a'lamu. Allah knows better what you gave birth to. Don't worry about that. You made your intention, you made your oath to me. I will forgive you what is best to fulfill that oath. Even if in your estimation, it's not going to work out. You understand? Even if you don't understand right now that how is this female child going to be able to live up to the oath that I gave to my Creator, I'm in trouble now, right? So Allah is saying what? Don't worry about that. I gave you what is the best alternative to fulfill this oath. You don't have to worry. Just watch and wait. Watch and wait. What will happen with Maryam radiallahu anha, and what I will choose, because this Maryam, it's also the indication here. Who was Maryam radiallahu anha? The mother of the awaited, by the way, Messiah of the children of Israel. You understand? It wasn't just a regular person who's going to stay in the temple and just worship Allah. This is the awaited Messiah of your people. Ya Bani Israel, inni Rasulullahi ilaykum. Right? He was the Messiah chosen. So this is a very big thing. Is it a small thing or not? It's like if you put it into a modern context, and there are some sisters who are kind of deluded sometimes all across the world to say things like that. Like my child is the Mahdi. Oh, mashallah. Right? But it's equivalent to that. Right? The one figure that is awaited by this ummah, right, to make that change for the ummah that will help them and bring them back to their original state of iman and so forth, and give them victory. That's also why, according to the Jews, you know why they made up this whole thing about crucifixion? Because we know what? وَمَا قُتِلُوا وَمَا صَلَبُوهُ. They didn't kill him and they didn't crucify him. Okay, but that's another issue for another time. But what would be the reason why the Yahud claimed that he was crucified? Because in their tradition, the Messiah was to bring victory to Bani Israel, take them out of their position of servitude and oppression. And one of the qualities of him, according to their tradition, is that he would never be able to be defeated nor killed by his enemies. So if he was crucified, what would that indicate for them? That he was not the Messiah. That he was a false Messiah. You understand my point? If he was killed or crucified, for them that's a sign he cannot be the Messiah. The Messiah cannot be touched by his enemies. You understand? He will not be able, and no enemy will be able to hurt him. And this man was crucified. How could he be the Messiah? This is why this is one of their early claims. Alright? Anyhow, okay. So the idea is that, again, it's equivalent to that. If a woman were to claim, like for instance, I gave birth to the Mahdi, right? So all Muslims understand this narrative, what that means. This great figure in the end of times who will lead the ummah and bring them back to the same things of any, right? Victory and peacefulness and truthfulness and so forth and so on. So if you made that claim, what would that be? Is that just a regular scholar or a regular person, or is that like a big deal? Which one is it? Right, so Allah's saying, I know what you gave birth to. In other words, what you wanted, I'm giving you even better. Okay? I am giving you the mother of the Messiah. Okay? And so then afterwards, then he says, وَلَيْسَ الذَّكْرُ كَالْأُنْثَى, right? That a man is not similar to a woman, which is kind of a big blow to many ideas nowadays, right? Meaning that they're not the same. They have differences. Right? There have to be a certain point where we admit that there are biological and other differences between the two, but that's not a problem. Why is it not a problem? Because we are taught to respect each other with those differences. You understand? Not that in order to get respect, you have to become exactly the same. What is also the implication of that is if both sexes become exactly the same and do exactly the same things, would they need each other anymore? What would you need a man for if you can do all the same things he does? And what would a man need a woman for if she's exactly the same as him? That's why in the end of times the Prophet even prophesied what's going on now. Right? When men are content with men and women are content with women. You get the right? Because there's no, when you have yin and yang, like even in Chinese tradition, what do you have? This is the process of life itself. Two opposites attracting each other and working with each other to produce what? Life itself, right? And to help each other. In this case, tarbiyah is done by what? Right, man and woman together, assisting each other and helping each other to do the tarbiyah of the child. Okay. Now, in the case of Maryam, radiallahu anha, she was muharrar, meaning that the tarbiyah was done directly from Allah. You see, and which is coming here. That when Zakaria alayhi salam, kullama dakhala alayha, every time he came to see her, what did he find? Wajada indaha rizqa. He found that she already had her food and drink there. You see what I'm saying? So what did he say? Even he was surprised. Anna laki hada. Where'd you get all this from? Nobody else is coming in this room except for me. And mihrab here in the ayah, it means that she was literally shut off from the rest of the world. She wasn't going out to the market or doing anything. And there was no supermarkets where you can get bananas in the wintertime. And that's why the ulama said that even the miracle was even more miraculous, because she would not only have food and drink from nowhere, but it would be out of season. You understand? So where even he had to say, "Anna laki hada," where'd you get all this from? What did she say? "Qalat huwa min indillah." This is from Allah. Meaning she was such a special person that she didn't need tarbiyah from anyone other than whom? Allah. She was getting it directly from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Which is another indication too, by the way, of an aqidah point of view, which is what we have to accept categorically. Why? Because this is a Quranic ayah. This is not the opinion of someone, this is a Quranic ayah. That what is called karamatu awliya, miracles or supernatural acts that are performed by people who are the friends of Allah, meaning close to Allah, are a reality. Why? Because Maryam, radiallahu anha, was she a prophet? No. Is getting food from no apparent source, out of season, is this not supernatural? Very much so. Okay, that doesn't happen in everyday life. And it is not the norm of how things go on. Okay, so what is it an indication of? That these things are a reality. They don't happen just to prophets. They also happen to particular people who have that relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You understand what I'm saying? But that's the indication. You may say, well, you just said men and women are the normal process of tarbiyah. Maryam anha was never married. So where did that come from? Well, because her tarbiyah was coming from whom? Right, directly from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which also makes her very special. This is why when the Prophet ﷺ, many men have reached perfection. What did he mean by perfection in this hadith? Meaning prophethood. Many men were chosen as prophet. In fact, another issue of Aqidah, the Quran makes it clear that all the prophets were what? Were men. So what is he saying? Except there were some amongst women, one of them being whom? Maryam anha. The indication being, if there was to be a woman who was a prophet, it would have been Maryam anha. And because of this, like her son, right, Isa alayhi salam, there was no one else providing for or doing the tarbiyah except whom? Allah himself, right? Okay, Wallahu tabarak wa ta'ala. And here also we see that she says what? وَإِنِّي سُمَيْتُهَا مَرْيَمَا وَإِنِّي أُعِيذُهَا بِكَ وَذُرِّيَّتَهَا مِنَ الشَّيْطَانِ الرَّجِيمِ. That I have named her Maryam, and I seek refuge in you for her and all of her children from the accursed shaitan. And this dua was answered. The Prophet ﷺ said that every child who is born cries because shaitan touches them, except for one, who was what? Isa, the son of Maryam. But there's an indication in this as well. The power of the mother's dua. You understand? The power of the dua and the prayer of a mother, that it is answered. So when she asked Allah to protect her children from shaitan, it was answered straight away without any type of, okay? Now some of the guys in the crowd may think that that's unfair. What about the father? The hadith also mentioned that this is one dua also, that there is no hijab, there is no barrier between that dua and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So you can never forget your children all the time, even no matter what it looks like, that your children are going this way and the other way. Instead of always worrying about, what I did and didn't do as a parent, you try your best, right? But you have to remember to make dua for them always. Because the dua of parents for children as you see in this ayah, is answered. Okay? It's effective. It works. Don't forget to make dua, and especially the mother, right? Because she has the most vested interest in something that came out of her. You understand? Like, it's the most vested interest. So she has the most, literally, rahim, the word rahma comes from what? Womb, right? So that rahma that the mother feels for the child, it's something that men cannot relate to. Okay? So if the mother makes dua for the child, it's like an absolute, and again, that means that you should marry women who are going to make good duas for their children, right? Also, the ulama say the opposite. What would the opposite be? When the mother makes bad dua, unfortunately, that's also a problem. And that's why you have to be very careful when you're mad of what you say. You'll never be anything. Or, may Allah do this to you. Oh, don't do that. And make dua that Allah helps them and helps them change. Not like, you're a loser and you're always going to be a loser. Or, right? May Allah do this. May Allah have you marry a horrible person and have horrible children so you can feel the way I feel. Never do that. Always be careful of that tongue. Always make, dua for khair from your children, because the opposite is true as well. Just as the mother's dua for children works, it also works in the opposite. Right? So the mother should always be careful about how she makes dua for her children. Okay? So then we'll kind of try and wrap it up. فَتَقَبَّلَهَا رَبُّهَا, right? بِقَبُولٍ حَسَنٍ وَأَنبَتَهَا نَبَاتًا حَسَنًا. So here again, Allah accepted this dua in a way, literally qabul hasan, I don't know how he translated there, but the most excellent of acceptance, if you would put it that way, meaning he accepted it in the most excellent of ways. This dua that she made, he accepted it in a way that there is no other better way of that dua being accepted. And what did he accept from her? Not just the dua, but her oath as well, meaning the oath that she made and the dua that she made, Allah accepted in a way that could not be suppressed. That Maryam anha became much better than what she expected. She was the mother of Masih, right, of the Messiah. And also that the protection that was warranted for her and for her children from shaitan was done in a way that was never done before. That's why the Prophet ﷺ and every other child was affected by the shaitan except for whom? You see what I'm saying? So this is the best way of accepting dua, right? That this, what was given to her was never given, as he says, I have preferred you al alameen, over all other what? Creation. So your prayer was answered in a way that you have been exclusively given what no other person has been given. You get what I'm saying? Your dua has been accepted in a way that you have been given what no other person has been given. And then وَأَنبَتَهَا نَبَاتًا حَسَنًا, and literally it means raised her up, but the word again is used for what? Growing something. Inanimate material, organic material. Why is he using? And here, who is the fa'il? This is important to knowing Arabic again, like who is the subject of this verb? Who raised Maryam? Remember what I was saying? Who is doing the tarbiyah? Allah himself raised this girl up in the same way, as I said, that's the indication, like just like you would choose for that seed, the best dirt, the best environment, the right season, the right amount of this, the right amount of nutrients and everything else. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave her the best of everything for her to achieve what she had. But then, what did he give her then? You see, this is all, which is what we were talking about before too, and this is related to the statement of Ibn Ata'Allah being unknown, is that she was what? She was away from everybody. Because in that statement of Ibn Ata'Allah, right after that, he said there's nothing that makes the heart grow more than i'tizal, meaning getting away from everything and everyone and your responsibilities and being exclusively for Allah. So when he said he raised her up in a way that it was the most excellent, what's the indication here? It's kind of hard on us, right? Because I like to be sociable myself, okay? But what is the indication here? You really want a good upbringing? The best thing to do, keep away from everybody. Many great scholars in history were known as what they would probably diagnose now as whatever, who knows what. But Imam Ibn Jawzi, Imam Nawawi, many of these greats were known since a young age to not want to play and one had to disposition to be away from everyone and just study. You understand what I'm saying? Like, we don't want to do what all the other children are doing. We're going to go over here and study or do something else. They had that kind of disposition. So Maryam, anha, basically wherever she was, al-mihrab. As I said, what was the mihrab? It was a closed room, but nobody was getting in and out except for her direct family, like Zakaria alayhi salam. You see what I'm saying? Meaning, the proper upbringing in tarbiyah, really, if you really want to know, the less contact you have with trends and people and parties and this, that, and the other thing, and the more contact you have with ibadah and studying, and right, the better it's going to be. You know, no doubt, children need to have playtime and need to be sociable and need to have relationships. But what we're saying is, if they're too much involved in that, all right, and they don't have a disposition to be away from people and take things seriously, then that's not a good upbringing. You understand what I'm saying? If there's too much of that, just as they also need time off to be able to play and have friends and things like that. But you don't want too much of that, because in the case of Maryam anha, this excellent upbringing was what? Being away from everybody. Literally. Being away from everybody. And then you have this miracle, as it's explained. And that's when, of course, we go on, Zakaria alayhi salam, after seeing this. Remember, a prophet, like, he doesn't know Allah can do what he wants. But because he's now seeing it, as the statement says, لَيْسَ الْخَبْرُ كَالْمُعَيَّنَ, it's actually hadith of the Prophet, the equivalent of the English seeing is believing. Once he saw it happening, then he said, you know what? I need to ask for a child too. Being that he's an old man and also his wife has also gone through menopause or whatever, he says, well, you know what? Hey, why does any of that matter? Look at all the things I'm seeing in this family, meaning his direct relatives. Okay? They're having children at an old age, and their child is getting food from nowhere. So I have a little bit of hope here. Right? Let's make dua and let's say, you know what? Ya Allah, why not give me a child too? You know, I haven't had any children up until now. I lost all my hope. Right? Scientifically speaking, it's not going to happen. But hey, I just saw something that wasn't supposed to happen at all. This girl is eating food and getting food from nowhere. So you know what? Let me make dua. Let me ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then therefore is the blessing of Yahya alayhi salam. And so forth and so on. The whole family story of Ali Imran, that is the entire lesson of it. True tarbiyah. How do you acquire it? What does it mean? What does it mean to Allah accept the family and choose somebody? These are the people Allah chooses. They had no connection with anything or anyone other than whom? Allah Azza wa Jal. And their tarbiyah was done by Allah directly. Right? And they achieved, again, I don't care what, even all these people in Harvard started off as a what, by the way? A seminary, which means it's what? A theological, religious, right? Liberal arts college. They're Christian. So what am I trying to say? Christians, at least we should say they love Isa in their own way, right? They love Maryam. Now what college did they go to? Isa, which college did he go to? Maryam, which school did she go to? How much money did they have? How much bank? What was their bank account? The gospel of prosperity and all this other stuff. And yet, they loved them to the point that they called them God. What am I trying to say? These people, in terms of what we measure people with, okay, wealth, prestige, titles, they didn't have any of it. Yet, they are regarded with more respect than anyone who has this wealth and prestige and titles. Am I right or wrong? Do these people respect them more than anyone who has got all those things, prestige, titles, wealth? Yes. So how do they earn it? Complete dedication to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. See what I'm saying? Complete dedication to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And even those people who love prestige, wealth, and titles have to humble themselves and say that we have nothing but the utmost regard to an extremity, obviously, to call them God. We had to do that, right? But we have nothing but utmost regard for a people and a family who didn't have any of those things. Their accomplishment was complete dedication to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So if you dedicate yourself to Allah, وَرَفَعْنَا لَكَ ذِكْرَكَ, as Allah told the Prophet, we will raise your remembrance, meaning your name, and the respect that I will give to you. no other human being will have. You see what I'm saying? And it won't matter what their status or anything else, because you are what? You are a prophet, you are my slave, you are the one who is my Habibullah, right? My beloved. So I will raise your rank in a way that all the other things and people that what people do to achieve it, they will not get the love and respect and honor that you have. Just as Abu Sufyan said when he saw the Sahaba and their behavior towards the Prophet ﷺ, you can't find any world leader that has this kind of dedication. People who love him this much, okay? No matter how much that person seems to have this title, that thing, or so, no person can be equivalent to the amount of respect and ihtiram that I've seen being given to Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And that is why, because he's dedicated to Allah, then all the hearts intrinsically will be what? Reverent and respectful to that person. So really again, if we want izzah, if we want honor, what does it come in? If I say, I did this, I did that, I'm this, I'm that, people also will challenge you, right? I say, oh, you're such a big deal, then I should compete. It's the nature of human beings. Or and if I can't get it, I'll become jealous, right? If I can't compete with you, I'll become, that's what I. If you say is the opposite, you acknowledge that everything you have is from Allah. Everything you have is because of the people around you. My parents, my wife or my husband, right? My teachers, all the people who made me what I am. Then what would be the attitude towards you? You will get respect in return. People will be reverent to you, like, mashallah, you know, this person is worthy of respect. They attributed their accomplishments to the true source, their creator, and the people whom the creator brought into their lives to support them and raise them and give them everything they need. That's how you get respect, not the opposite. I. What happens to I? This is the last point. Simple. What did the Prophet say? This is shaitan, this is his thing, me. Ana khayrun min, I, me. So, man rafa'a or man takabbara, wada'u Allah. If a person is proud and arrogant, what will Allah do? He will put them down. So take a look at the self-made man who just insults everyone and swears that he's the best and is the most narcissistic person. Does anyone really like him? I just read an interview, you know what I'm talking about, right? Do I have to give names? I just saw an interview recently where someone said they were on a talk show with them somewhere, and his own son came afterwards and said, you seem to be the only person that ever liked my father. Whoever came in this game and sat with him and spent some time with him, you're the only person that's ever actually liked him. Why? Man takabbara. I'm a self-made man. I can say and do what I want. I can be abusive and just proud and just talk the way I want, do it because it's all me. What does Allah do in the hearts of people? Wada'u Allah. Everyone will look at that person and say, I can't stand this person. Right? Even the people around you will say, I can't stand you. But if you humble yourself, what is it? Man tawada'a. What did the Prophet say? Rafa'u Allah. The one who humbles themselves, Allah will raise their rank to the point that every heart will be reverent and love that person and be respectful of that person. You know, the Prophet ﷺ, again, could never be, no person was respected as much as him. But how did he get it? Through arrogance or through humility? Humility. So may Allah make us, inshallah, people who, you know, take these lessons to heart and try and humble ourselves and be aware that we are not self-made people. We are people who have, you know, a lot to be thankful to others and the things they contribute to us, and to dedicate ourselves to Allah alone and allow Allah to take care of our affairs. And if even in that, if you want to be popular, which should never be the intention, but if you want to make a difference, you can't make more of a difference than these people. That's why Allah talked about them. And how do they make that difference? Devotion. Literally, Maryam anha was not going out on Instagram and Facebook like, look at me. Yet there's no human figure that I can think of, again, just in terms of numbers, that is more revered and more talked about. You see what I'm trying to say? Without doing any of that. So dedicate yourself to Allah. Allah will make you known somehow or the other. Okay, He will do it in a way you can never imagine. I don't think at that time in Jerusalem they would imagine that this is what would happen. Do you think so? Even according to Christian sources, how many people were there with Isa alayhi salam before he was, according to them, crucified? How many? Huh? 13. Exactly. How many? 13! Like, be basically like the same amount of people almost in this room. Would you call that like popular? Like, this is it. This is all the followers we have. In any worldly measure of things, like to say that a group of people like that would make that kind of impact in the world, like what would you say to a person? Yeah, okay, sure. MashaAllah. You know, right. I believe you, pal. Right? Like that's definitely going to happen. You look around you, what's going on? And again, those people who follow him, what were they, according to Christian sources themselves? Were they rich and powerful? Not only were they not just rich, they were also sometimes people who were looked down upon. Even one of them, that's the Christian boast, they boast about, she was a prostitute. Right? Is that correct? It's true. And what did she do? She became a disciple of Isa alayhi salam. A woman whom nobody in that society or any society would look at with any type of respect became a disciple, and even according to them, a saint at the hands of Isa alayhi salam. So the lesson is very clear for us, you know, and inshallah, hopefully we will always remember those lessons, because that is all we need, really. Pure hearts and dedication to Allah. Not that we're perfect, but dedication to Allah. Making dua to Allah, being humble. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will take our work further than we could ever imagine. فَتَقَبَّلَهَا قَبُولًا حَسَنًا وَأَنْبَتَهَا نَبَاتًا حَسَنًا, right? And in ways that we'd never be able to imagine. May Allah ta'ala make it easy for us. I don't know if there's any questions. I mean, even like we discussed before, questions can be off topic too, if you like. That's not a problem, inshallah. But if I can't answer it right now, you just have to wait.
What's the concept of mannat or nazar in, like, can we do that? Like, if Allah do this for us, we do that? Like,
Yes.
Yes?
Yes. Yeah, you can do that. But then it becomes like an obligation on you. Whatever you've promised,
Right.
you have to then now do that. It's like an obligation. And to the point that even if you pass away before fulfilling that obligation, it's someone else has to do it for you.
In one of the surah, which I don't remember, we did that, I think Surah Mursalat. I don't remember the name of the surah. It has said that that you're not encouraged to do nazar, because Allah does not need nazar. He's too much, above that. You don't need to say like a sort of, how do I say, brag. No, not, what do you say? Like, it's
Bargain.
bargain.
Yeah.
So you do it with the intention of, like, as a for dua.
Yeah.
You do the dua, and regardless if it's fulfilled or not, you just do the dua, and then if it's fulfilled, it's fulfilled. So is that, this is when you said that Maryam alayhi salam actually was a nazar of Hannah.
Yes.
But then, is this right that it also said that no, you shouldn't be doing the nazar? Allah does not need the nazar.
Yeah, I mean, obviously you can't do it with the idea that it's like you said, bargaining. Okay, Allah does what He wants. But it's more of, if you bless me with what I'm asking, then I will promise, okay, that I will do such and such a thing. It's not a
So
bargain.
just such a thing, not that I will devote myself, is what you're trying to say.
Well, that's the thing. When we're talking about such and such a thing, it's very general. So in the case of Hannah, the mother of Maryam, radiallahu ta'ala anha, she wasn't saying like, I'm going to fast. What did she say? That whatever I give birth to, it is
I'll give
yours.
it to you.
It is for your cause and for your service. So it's a very general thing, right? That it wasn't so specific as something like, I'm going to give $1,000 away, or I'm going to fast for 3 days, or it was more like, whatever it is you give me. But that's where she was tried, because the idea is that whatever is general doesn't include like male as opposed to female, even though the implication would be the only person who could do this is a male. So then Allah tried, if you will, not tried, but like, it was kind of a test also for her that, I'm going to give you a female.
But that is permissible to say, if Allah, if you give me this, I'll fast 10 days. or-
Yeah, it is permissible. I guess what you're trying to...
So that's what I'm trying to say, is what he just asked.
Yeah,
Is
you
that
can do
permissible?
that. Yes, it is. The
Like,
idea
if
is...
something I get, I'll do namaz, nafil,
Right.
for whatever.
Right.
That's what I had the assumption, that you shouldn't do it. but because it's like Allah says, well, you're not gonna do nothing if I didn't give it to you then.
Right. It's permissible though. You can do it. It's permissible, but it's probably better sometimes to be like less specific than, I will do this if you do this.
Yeah, like my child passed this test,
Right.
then I'll do this. So if he doesn't pass the test, then I'm not gonna do it. Or Allah would listen to you if you bargain with him.
Yeah. No, it's not. That's not what it's more of like. Again, like it's like this. It's like if this blessing is given to me, then with that blessing I will do this with that specific blessing. You understand? It's not like a bargain there. It's more of like, if you give me what I like, right, like a type of shukr, okay, then I will give you what I wanted back to you, almost like if this is given to me, then in return I give it to you. It's a different. It's not bargaining. Like you do this, I'll do this. Like, and if you don't do this, I won't do this. That's not the idea. You know what I'm saying? Like, and if it doesn't happen, then I'm there's no way I'm fasting or doing nafil salah. Like, I never. Of course, then it's a problem. But it's more like as gratitude to what you gave me, I will give it, right, to you in your service. It is all yours because it's your blessing, which everything is the blessing of Allah, no doubt. But this was extraordinary to ask for a child when you don't have the physical means, meaning like you're in menopause or something.
So
That's
in
not.
this case, she didn't ask for her benefit. Hannah just gave whatever Allah gave her back to Allah
Right,
subhanahu wa ta'ala.
exactly.
So that's different than like, you know what I'm saying?
Yes,
we
exactly.
gain and then,
Much different.
yeah.
Much different. And plus, again, this is also because of the nature of what she's asking for.
Yeah.
That's usually where another comes in. It's like what you're asking for is not like a normal request. Oh, Allah, turn this wall into a horse or whatever. Something. It's not like, it wasn't that silly, her request, but it wasn't normal, meaning, again, she was at the state where technically she's not supposed to have children. Right? So she was asking for something that was a little bit out of the norm. Right? So if you're going to, do something like that, it's like, well, okay, if I give it to you, then what are you going to do? It's similar to if you go later on in Surah Al-Ma'idah, which is coming up, when the followers of Isa alayhi salam asked for this miracle of the Ma'idah. Meaning that can you, as you know the dua, can Allah send us down food from the heavens so that we will be assured? Right? But what was the response? I will do it, but if any of you turn away after this, I will punish you like I have not punished anyone else. And if you're going to ask for something like that, okay, that where like literally, like, people ask silly questions like that, God, if you're real, do this. So then if God does it, and you still turn away after that, you're in big trouble. So you have to give something back as like, a surety that yes, if this happens, okay, I'm never going to turn away, or I will give what you give me for your sake. You see what I'm trying to say? It's not like it's like, if Allah does this type of thing for you, because it's not a normal thing you're asking for. Normally you have to ask for things that you've done the work for. So if you want children, you're married and you're young and you can have children, right? And then you ask Allah for children. That's you're doing what you have to do. If you want to succeed at something, you're working towards it, like you're studying, and then you ask for Allah Ta'ala to give you success in your test. But if you're not even in school and I want a degree, or I'm not even married, I want children. Well, what you're asking for right now, right? And if Allah gives it to you, then that means that you have to show somewhat complete gratitude and diligence after that. If you turn away after Allah does something like that for you, you're going to be in bigger trouble than other people would be, because it's like now you're like almost at the level of you've seen it now with your own two eyes. There's no like seeing is believing, the same thing. Now what are you going to deny for? You're going to have doubt now after I just put something in like literally like in midair, just something comes in front of you, and then after that you're going to say, oh, I still have doubts. Right? This is why, to end on that note, mu'jizat and supernatural acts of the prophets are the last straw for the people they give da'wah to. In other words, they're given respite until that time. Once they see a supernatural act and they still reject the prophet, they're done. Because that's the last straw. And you're still going to deny after all this. Look at the people of Salih alayhi salam. What did they say? They mocked him and they said, okay, I will believe if you can get a she-camel coming from this mountain that's so big that it'll take 3 days and 3 nights worth of food and drink from us. And then what will Allah do? Hadhi naqatullah, well, there it is. They were doing it as a joke, like, oh yeah, okay, right, sure, so do this then. They thought it was funny. But then when Allah brought it, uh-oh, but what was the problem? They killed it. Right? Instead of being humble and saying, well, we were making a joke and playing with him and now it's happened, let's be humble and submit. They're like, no, forget it, kill it, get rid of it. So at that point in time, what was the end result? That was it. Allah wasn't playing games with them anymore. You're done. After all that, right, and now you're going to still be the way you are, there's no respite for you. So, that's why you should also be careful. That's why maybe that's what they mean. It's like, it's not always a good thing, because if Allah does give you exactly what you're asking for, what does that mean for you? You better just start acting up right now, because you've seen it with your own. Exactly what you asked for is exactly what Allah did for you. And usually we make another when we're desperate, right? Meaning we don't have any other way. Like, what am I going to do? Last resort. Oh, Allah, do this for me and I'll do this. So then Allah does it, and now you're going to behave in a certain way. That's why it's not usually something that we should do, because of that reason. Once Allah shows you these things, to turn away from that afterwards, like He told the people, the Hawariyun of Isa and Islam, if you turn away after this, I will punish you in a way I have never punished anyone. So, yeah.
But, Brother Dickinson,
Yes, sir.
what I wonder, although it is permissible, as you mentioned, but
Yeah.
this is not encouraged.
Yeah,
It's-
exactly.
It was discouraged actually in a hadith, because according to hadith, it doesn't make any difference for Allah. If you
Of course.
ask Allah that, okay, I will do this, then do this. Because you cannot
Yeah,
force
but
Allah.
that rationale doesn't, Allah doesn't care about anything.
Yeah.
No, Allah can do what He wants, but this is the point, is that if you are given exactly what you asked for, now you are now in a position where you're held more responsible for the things you do afterwards. So it's better just to do what? Just to leave it to Allah and not ask for direct results. Direct results means exactly this, like you want exactly as you asked for it to happen, the way you asked for it. That's not a good thing, because again, if that does happen, afterwards what will happen is just like what I'm explaining, like the mu'jizat. Afterwards, if you turn away or you do something that you're not supposed to do, now you're in real trouble.
I guess the
See
question
what I'm saying?
is, say for example, you want a child.
Yeah.
The difference between just making dua for a child versus I will fast 20 days if I get a child.
Right.
You know what I mean? Is one preferred over the other, or?
Yeah, it's better not to if because of this reason specifically, because again, if it does happen, again, think you're given exactly what you made dua for.
Well, if you're given exactly and you do the 20 days.
That's fine and good.
Yeah.
But you're not always guaranteed that you can do that. That's the point. We don't know
I see.
ourselves.
So
as
you're
people.
putting that upon yourself. You just
Exactly.
got to make sure you fulfill it.
Right. And you better.
Yeah.
Because after that, it's like, okay, now after same thing.
Right,
if
otherwise
you-
you're playing games.
Right,
Yes.
you're playing games, and you can't play games, especially if Allah does give you exactly what you want, and then you're like, oh well, it's a big problem. Better just to let Allah do what He's going to do regardless. That's the whole. But whatever is destined for you is already going to happen, no matter what. You know what I'm trying to say? So now you just put another burden on yourself. You see, it was already going to happen, but now you put the burden on yourself that when it happens, now you must fulfill your end of the bargain. The reason why her dua is accepted like this is because she was very, like these people were the crux of sincerity. They're not going to say things and not mean it.
Yeah.
She meant it, like what I would, you give me and it's yours. Like she didn't like play those kind of games. Where for us, we have to think about our own state when we ask for those du'as. Are we just desperate? That's what, like we're bargaining. Like we're like making some kind of deal with like God now has to do what we want. Like that's a big difference in mentality, right? So the person like that, if they're just desperate, a lot of times what happens, like it happened in the time of the Prophet ﷺ, in another hadith where a man asked for wealth, and the Prophet ﷺ didn't oblige his dua. After the third time when he insisted, I want wealth, I want to get out of this poverty, he said, okay, we'll see what happens. And it said he refused to pay zakah from the time of the Prophet ﷺ all the way into Uthman. You see what I'm trying to say? Like the Prophet knew that you're insisting on something is not good for you, and when you get it, you're not the type of person who is going to fulfill your end of the bargain. So I'm not going to make dua for that. I'm not going to give you that. It's self-destruction. But the guy insisted. He said, okay, this is what happens when you think you know better and you insist. Allah will give it to you, and it's not going to be any good for you. Now you're rich, and what happens? Every time someone comes and asks you for zakat, you refuse to pay. That's it. You see what I'm saying? So we shouldn't play those kind of games with our Creator. You get what you want, and now all of a sudden, now when you got what you want, you're gone. The people who are sincere, if Allah blesses them this day, what do? That's their whole, they are true to what they've said. They will give what they were. In fact, even you can say that her whole intention was to do what? Have a child for this purpose. Not have a child just because I want a child. And if you give me like a child, like again, like as a little boy or girl, if you give me what I want, Daddy, then I'll promise I'll clean my room. Right? Not like that anymore. Like, I want this because I want to give it for your sake. Yeah. Anyhow, khair. I mean, there's a lot to, but that's the basis of it. It's all about sincerity, really, and how we think of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Wallahu a'lam.
So, it says time for Zohar.
I think, I don't know what time is.
1:14 was the Zohar time.